Hola! Welcome back to Guinean Mapping YT. We are going to be watching Geography Now Argentina today. Okay. I'm just waiting for this to load, then let's just start. Yep.
American country, this is the land of silver, kind of.
Oh, is it really? Oh, it's fine.
Not really. Welcome to Argentina. It's time to learn geography now! We'll explain more about that silver stuff later, but first,
You know we dissect the flag.
you know the drill. Let's talk about the flag. The Argentinian flag has equally long, tall, white and blue stripes, and it's interesting because there technically isn't an official meaning to these colors. Many will say that it resembles the sky with blue and the white clouds. However, many historians will tell you that it's colored that way to represent loyalty towards the House of Bourbon. In the center is the Sun of May emblem. Historians accredit this emblem to representing the Incan design of the sun god Inti. Alright, that was fun. Now let's talk about Argentina's location and borders in political geography.
Yeah, political geography. I realized why are they doing
Argentina is located on the bottom part of the South American continent, bordered by 5 other countries and the Atlantic to the east. It's divided into 23 separate provinces and the autonomous capital city of Buenos Aires. Argentina's borders are pretty simple, except for that one island called Isla Martín García that lies in Uruguayan waters and is kind of shared by both countries. Otherwise, many of Argentina's borders are actually just natural land barriers, such as the Andes Mountains in the west by Chile, and in the Misiones province, the Rio Parana, Iguazu, and San Antonio rivers, and the Uruguay River for Uruguay and Brazil. Which, by the way, gives Argentina a very distinguishable panhandle, kind of like Afghanistan that we studied a few weeks ago. You can even see it from space. Due to the fact that the land is less cultivated and thanks to natural river borders, it has a more lush green appearance that sticks out in contrast to its neighbor nations. But then you get the arbitrary subtle borders over flat land and hills, kind of like the ones by Bolivia, sometimes marked boldly and sometimes virtually invisible. Where things get really complicated, though, is in the south, more specifically, the furthest south. Tierra del Fuego, or the Land of Fire, which is pretty ironic considering that it's actually one of the coldest places in all of Argentina, was named after the fires that Magellan saw the native tribe
They don't completely have it. They're naturally divided with Chile.
was using on the land when he discovered the area in the 16th century. Anyway, it's the smallest province in all of Argentina, and it's actually an island that they share with Chile. And they kind of have like a who can claim the bottom of the world competition when it comes to this territory.
Sorry.
On this island, Argentina has a population that far surpasses Chile's by about 19 times. And for a while, had the world's southernmost city, Ushuaia, established in 1884. However, Chile didn't back down from the fight, and in the 1950s, built a small little establishment just a few miles south across the Beagle Channel, named Puerto Williams, or Cabo de Hornos, named after Cape Horn, and hence, with a population slightly over 3,000, and even their own little airport, Chile just barely beat Argentina in having the world's most southern town. But where things get even more complicated are these islands right here. Now, if you ask an Argentine, they'll tell you that these islands are called the Islas Malvinas. They totally belong to Argentina, no questions about it, end of story. They're so serious about it that they even named an entire stadium and an airport after the islands to reflect the sovereign claim that they have over the islands. If you ask a British person, they'll tell you that these islands are a collectivity of islands made up of the Falkland Islands in the west, South Georgia, and the South Sandwich Islands, not to be confused with the Sandwich Islands, which was the name originally given to the Hawaiian Islands.
Oh.
Argentina claims that after gaining independence from Spain in 1816, the islands were given to them from the Spanish Empire, and the British came in 1830 and forcibly pushed out the Argentines that had settled there and barred them from ever coming back. However, the British claimed that they were the ones that discovered the islands in the 17th century, even though technically the French were the first ones to actually colonize the islands. And either way, they have a permanent population of about 3,000 people that live on the islands that are British nationals that were born and raised on the islands. Eventually, tensions rose and they went to war over the islands in 1982. Long story short, the UK was able to fight off the Argentine troops and hold on to the islands, although Argentina still doesn't recognize the UK's sovereign claim. It's kind of funny though, because in 2009, former UK Prime Minister Gordon Brown actually met up with Argentine President Cristina Fernandez de Kirchner. And when it came to the Falkland Island thing, they just kind of awkwardly said they wouldn't talk about it. Well, that was a lot of information. Now let's talk about what the land actually looks like.
Like most of South America, it's mostly green. There's a little desert and mountainous range that's mostly green.
Argentina is one of the most diverse countries in terms of landscape. In almost every corner, you see something that is completely different from the opposite corner that you were just at. In the north by Brazil and Paraguay, you can find rainforests and lush, humid tropic zones. In the interior and Midwest, you can find flat pampas and farmlands and hills. In the west by Chile, you find the mountains, with the highest point being Mount Aconcagua, which, by the way, is the highest mountain in all of South America. In the east, by the Atlantic, you can find nice coastal beaches. A little bit further south, you can find ranches and mineral mines. And a little bit further south from that, you can find cold and chilly rocky deserts and cacti in the Patagonia region.
Oh, fun fact. I don't think you know this, but Antarctica is a desert. Sure, fun fact.
And petrified wood forests, such as the one in Ormachea. If you go even further south into the end of the Patagonia region, you can find glaciers and ice. This is the coldest part of Argentina. It's kind of interesting, though, because the south part of South America has what you would probably call a reverse double rain shadow effect, in which wind currents cause...
Sorry, my bad. I'm going to say further away from their equator, because since I live in the northern hemisphere, we're like 90% of the population of this earth. Yeah, the further you grow up north, the colder it is.
Cause the moisture to stay in the north part of Argentina, making the north part of Chile a desert, and the complete opposite in the south, in which Argentina becomes a desert, and Chile has a lush green interior. Kind of interesting how that happens. Funny story, Argentina was actually originally colonized because the settlers thought that the land would be rich in silver, hence where Argentina gets its name, the Latin word argentum, which means silver. However, in a weird turn of events, Argentina was actually rich in almost every single mineral except silver. Zinc, copper, and lead can be found in various mines all over. However, Argentina is especially rich in boron, making Argentina the third largest boron producer in the world after...
Alright, I need to tell you about something. They thought in what's now Colombia and Venezuela there would be some gold city, but it was just made up, so yeah.
Turkey and the U.S. Hope I haven't boroned you yet with... okay, that was terrible. Let's just...
Okay.
Here's the demographics. Argentina has a population of about 41 million people, or roughly the same as the country of Sudan. The Argentines have a saying, Los Argentinos descienden de los barcos, or the Argentines are descended from the boats, meaning that Argentina is almost completely and entirely a country of immigrants. Argentina can actually disputably be considered as the whitest country in all of South America. It's kind of hard to distinguish the specific percentages, though, because many Argentine census reports don't really factor in race too often, but even the most conservative estimates put Argentina at somewhere around 85 to 95% European. Believe it or not.
Wow, just wow. I'm surprised.
About half of the Argentinian population is Italian, or at least partial Italian in their descent.
Okay.
Floods of people from Italy immigrated in the 19th and 20th centuries to avoid economic turmoil in the...
Yeah, and they moved across South America. Moved to areas across South America. Okay.
The mother country, and saw Argentina as a way to rebuild their lives. Spanish, of course, plays into that mix as well, and about 17% of the people identify as French, and about 8% German, with the remaining European groups coming from a slew of countries like Norway, Sweden, the Netherlands, and so on. In fact, interestingly enough, if you go to the Chubut province in the south, you can actually find a town of about 50,000 Welsh people called Uladva Gymraeg. A good portion of these people are actually fluent in Welsh, making Argentina one of the few places in the world where you can actually find a genuine Welsh community with instituted facilities that...
Yeah, outside of Wales, of course. Probably like the rest of the UK. Probably like the rest of the UK. And maybe, and probably Ireland.
Speak Welsh as a main language. Things get a little fuzzy though when it comes to the natives. Although people who identify as full-blooded Amerindian only make up about 2% of the population, about 9% of the population identify as mestizo, or mixed between Amerindian and European. However, a recent study by geneticist Daniel Korach has theorized that over half the entire population of Argentina probably has at least one ancestor that was Amerindian. Argentina actually used to have a surprisingly large black population, especially during the colonial days, and at one point during Spanish colonization, population, blacks actually made up a third of the entire population. However, after independence, the population of blacks sharply declined due to a number of factors, such as epidemics, anti-African legislation in the early years, and many of them emigrated to more African-friendly nations like Paraguay and Brazil. Today, they make up less than 1% of the entire population. However, they have definitely left their mark on Argentine culture with contributions to art and music, and arguably the inception of the tango. When it comes to culture, Argentina has a very defined and nationalistic approach to how they operate and view in life. They like to keep things classy, but in their own Argentinian way, distinct from the European way. The last thing an Argentinian would want to hear you say is, "You are so Spanish." Argentina also has a huge wine culture, as they are the 5th largest producer of wine in the world, and they're very heavy on soccer, or football, and basketball.
Yeah, soccer, football. Yeah, when I said soccer, I knew he was meaning football. Oh, because, I remember there was an American I saw once, and it called soccer. Oh, he said, "Oh, did he score a touchdown?" Wait, who's that player? Wait, man. What the heck? Oh, yeah.
With an impressive amount of players already having been drafted in the NBA, such as my favorite, Andres Nocioni. Speaking of international trade-offs, let's talk about Argentina's friends. In order to understand how Argentina works diplomatically, you kind of have to understand its history. Since its independence, Argentina has gone through a lot of crazy times. To make things short, Argentina was part of the Spanish Empire as well as many of her neighbor nations. However, when an empire collapses, guess what happens? Internal conflict. In post-colonial independent times, Argentina has had wars and battles with every single one of her neighbor nations except for Uruguay. Today, Argentina gets along pretty well with her siblings, even though she adopted different trade policies from many of them. Now, when it comes to Spain, Argentina definitely does not have post-colonial Stockholm syndrome. Now, granted, Argentines do love Spanish people, they just don't like the Spanish government. However, when it comes to their best friends, Argentina might probably consider Uruguay and Italy their best friends. Uruguay has a very similar demographic and culture to the Argentines, and they have been very close for as long as their country's conceptions. Some might even argue that Uruguay is kind of like the cute little sidekick of Argentina. And of course, Italy is definitely a huge player in the Argentinian clique. Not only do over half of the people in Argentina identify with Italy ethnically, but many of the major and most important companies in Argentina are Italian-based, such as Techint, Iveco, Pirelli, and Telecom. In conclusion, Argentina might not exactly be the country of silver that it was originally thought to be, but the spirit of the people with their fierce culture and passion definitely make them look golden. Stay tuned, Armenia is coming up next.
Okay, stay tuned for the Armenia episode. Okay, see you later, bye.